evening, everyone. I've been told I need to actually speak into the microphone. Oh, sorry, get this out of the way. Okay. Do we have attendance? Yes. Okay, great. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda. Motion.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, do we have any citizens' comments, Karen? Okay, well, if you are here and you want to comment, you'll have another chance at the end of the meeting. So should they come up to you with the little form? Karen has forms, so if you intended to come to comment, you'll have another chance at the end of the meeting, and you can visit Karen to let her know that you want to do that. Okay, that brings us to financial reports.
Good evening, everyone. You have my report in front of you. I'm just going to highlight our tax receipts and our overall budget standing year to date. So as of October 31st, 2017, we have received $14,882,712, or 95.4% of our budgeted tax receipts of $15,598,058. As of October 31st, we are currently under budget by $769,417. Any questions?
Questions, anyone?
No.
Okay, I don't think so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Jim, you're up with budget and finance.
The committee met, and I believe we discussed 3 items. First, we met with representatives of the Old National Bank to review the portfolio of investments that they hold on behalf of the library. Everything is looking good there. Nothing to report. There will be an additional conversation this evening about some changes to our budget and finance policies as they pertain to investments, so we'll leave that conversation until the point in the agenda when we get to those resolutions. We started that conversation at our last full board meeting, so these are the revised proposals. And we also had some conversation about the idea of the Ann Arbor District Library starting a foundation, which was an outgrowth of a conversation at Budget and Finance, and I believe, and I'll ask you, Colleen, maybe to say a few words about a meeting that Josie and Colleen took with Neil Hajra at the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation.
That's true. We did have that meeting with Neil, and we asked a lot of questions about the pros and cons of foundations and threshold for it. If we had $50,000 that we wanted to put in an endowment tomorrow, correct me, Josie, if I get the numbers wrong, we could do it. We could also start our own foundation, and I believe that was a $5 million recommended startup. Do I have that right?
Correct.
It doesn't make sense to us at this time, based on our conversations with Neil and at Budget and Finance, to start a foundation on behalf of the library. Yes, if we had a donor who was very interested in endowed funding for the library, going with a community foundation fund did make good, solid sense. We don't have a donor prospect at this time, nor do we have a robust annual fundraising plan. And that comes with many question marks as well. What we do have is a 501c3, and we can accept donations on behalf of the library. There's nothing wrong with us fundraising, but it is complicated by the fact that we're a governmental entity as well as a 501c3. Josie, can you remind me what year it was established that the library is a 501c3 as well?
That would have been, Ed may remember this better than I do. I was not director of the library. It probably was in 1998 or 1999 when you all did that. I could look exactly, and I could find it exactly, but it's been almost 20 years.
What's interesting, and the reason I bring up the time frame is, like, it's a really interesting anomaly where I knew that before, but it wasn't as clear to me. There's no reason for us to start a foundation when we're already a nonprofit organization. So, so we're in this unique slice, in this unique space. So when Josie went to the meeting last summer with all of the libraries that have foundations, yes, we're an unusual entity, but I think we can play to the way we're established. There's no reason for change. And I like where we're at. I think it's a very positive place where we're at in terms of, are we going to go do heavy soliciting of annual gifts tomorrow? No. But where we're at, we're in a place where if there are people who want to give to the library and that's their philanthropic passion, we can take a gift.
Colleen, do we publish 990s for our 501c3 for the nonprofit?
Yes.
Yes. And I don't recall seeing them, but I can tell you we've had our
We do.
Yes, we do. No doubt that we
do.
And we are also the board of directors of the nonprofit,
Yes.
which I learned in the context of
Yes.
this meeting.
Yes.
So, and then additionally, this of course, of course, one of the drawbacks of our even if we accept donations through our nonprofit, through our 501c3, we are still subject to the rules and regulations of investing that govern us as a governmental entity, which is one of the pros of establishing a separate foundation, because those funds could be invested differently, more aggressively, with a higher return.
Or using an existing community foundation as a way to do that.
As a way to do that,
So
that's right.
another way to do it, if we're thinking about capital expenditures from a donor, is to have those gifts on a spend down, structure a payment system with the donor, and make sure we talk to our attorneys, and we do what we do at the university when we raise large gifts. We talk to the attorneys, we make sure everything is above board, we have gift agreements, and then usually there's a payment schedule, but it would probably be a flow in and out if it's cash. If it's a cash expendable gift versus, this is really boring.
Versus if it's an
Versus
endowment
endowed
gift, sorry, like I'm skipping any steps of logic in my brain.
Community foundation.
That's right.
Which we have a great entity here in town. We might as well use it if we
That's
have
right.
a donor who wants to make that kind of gift.
This, of course, has also led us to, within the committee, to want to review the endowments that we do carry within the organization, which I believe we plan to do that at the next meeting, because there may be some, they're small and few, but there may be some chance to think about how we would reorganize those endowments potentially to go, into a community foundation fund.
Manage them.
And manage them
Manage
differently.
them a little
Don't
bit
they have to be of a
differently.
certain size before that makes it practical?
That's what
Yeah.
Colleen was saying, yeah.
So right now we have some donors who have given endowed gifts, and they're living donors, not exclusively, correct?
Not exclusively,
Not
no.
exclusively.
We have one endowment fund where the donor is not living, the Whole Tree Fund, which is the large one, which is
Yeah.
over $300,000.
Yeah.
And then there are smaller funds, the Westerman Fund and the Keniston Fund and the Schaefer Fund, and then the Price Fund.
And the way you can talk about this all you want.
Sure.
This is so interesting.
Well, those funds are, the Whole Tree Fund is an actual endowment that was done through a will that we did not expect, and it was delivered to the library. And the library board voted to accept it under its terms, which was to invest it within the rules of the law regarding public libraries and the nonprofit around the library. But that no more than 5% of its interest, no more than 5% of its principal could ever be spent. The library is not spent from the Whole Tree Fund. It's just remained invested. Then there are the other funds. Schaefer Fund is a very small fund that a gentleman, he came in every year and gave the library several $100s at the end of every year for the purchase of poetry and literary criticism in memory of his deceased siblings. So at his death, $10,000 came to the library to continue doing that. So that's that fund. The Westerman Fund, Scott Westerman, who is living and a resident at Glacier Hills now, He and his wife came to me and wanted to set this fund up to support the programming and the collection development for children and teens at the public library. So the Westerman Fund, they began the Westerman Fund with a $15,000 gift, and I believe right now it's at $35,000. It's it and the Schaefer Fund and the Price Fund and the Keniston Fund are all funds, quote, acting as endowments and can be spent at my discretion, the library director's discretion, within the rules of the agreements at which they were developed. So we have spent from the Westerman Fund over the years for summer reading, and the Westermans have always supported that, and Mr. Westerman really appreciates that. The Schaefer Fund is used exactly for what it was designed for the purchase of poetry and literary criticism. It's not a lot, and that amount of money for that purpose will last for a very, very long time. The Price Fund is a memorial fund for Benjamin Price, who is deceased, and his family gave the library the money several years ago, and they have not determined yet how they would principally like it spent. It was a tragedy, so I've said to them, when you know, let me know, and so the money's safe. And that's how that's been done. The Keniston Fund was set up many, many years ago, way many years prior to my being employed here, for the professional development of library professionals in the library. So if we have someone who wants to go to a conference or some sort of outside education that's extremely expensive or out of the country, then we can consider using the Keniston Fund to help do that. But no monies have come into the Keniston Fund directly in a really long time. So I've been cautious about using a great deal of that money. And that explains, I think that's all the fund. And the Ladies Library Association, we now have a fund. It's not an endowment. It's a fund that the ladies established where their money goes into a fund that we hold at the library, and then we work with them about the expenditure. That's primarily for fine arts and the use of the money to support the fine arts in the library. So I beg your pardon, I forgot about that.
So the way
I wasn't going to let you.
No, I remembered. I just remembered just in time.
the way we've structured these funds seems really productive. It seems like we're in great shape. We have the 501c3. And it's manageable for the library. I don't see anything that isn't working in the best interest of the library right now. And the only issue is, does it behoove the library to open a community a fund? And my guess is it all depends. If there's a future donor who wants to do that at Community Foundation, then yes, we do it. But,
absolutely.
you know.
I think that's all the business from the Budget and Finance Committee.
You were going to mention that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes. And also because I was reminded with the launch of congratulations with the launch of the Fifth Avenue Press and the Authors Party, which I read a great article about in Concentrate. And now our very own Rich Reddy, who is in the back there, is one of the Fifth Avenue Press's first published authors. That we have some unfinished business to consider in terms of the financial model, and so the Budget and Finance Committee will also add that as an agenda item to discuss as part of either the next meeting or the meeting after that, and we can bring that conversation back to the board. We'll drill down on it a little bit and bring it back for full group discussion.
Great.
Thanks, Jamie, for reminding me.
So from the executive committee, I have two updates for you. One is that Josie has scheduled a meeting for the executive committee with Tom Cavanna of Epic MRA to do the preliminary question sort of generation process. Am I describing that okay? So that's coming up in a couple of weeks, right after Thanksgiving, I think. So after that, we talked last month about the next step after that is for us to sort of come to the next meeting with a time for us to talk a little bit more as a group about potential questions, but you'll get the initial process results before then. So you'll have time to look at, yes, Victoria?
Jamie, can you remind me of the overall timeline for our Epic MRA study? When are we looking to get it out? And when are we
It's
looking to
staying the
deliver?
same as what we had originally talked about, so
I'm-
it's February.
What do you mean, what's going to be given to us at the next meeting?
So when we go out with the questionnaire, the Epic MRA questionnaire, we get to say to Epic MRA what we want them to ask about. So they need to hear from us what we want.
The way to do that independently before or when?
No, so the three of us on the executive committee will meet with Tom in person to kind of share what we're hoping to get out of the survey with him. We'll work with him a little bit on formulating kind of like a rough draft of what the questions might be, and you'll get that before the next meeting. And then at the next meeting, we'll talk about what don't you see, what do you think we should have, what do you like that you see?
We'll continue to work through and refine.
How long do we
draft.
have to make it the final?
Well, it won't go out till February, so I would think that even if we don't finish our discussion at the December meeting, we could talk about it again in January
Will
or,
we have categories of information we want to learn about by age group, by characteristics, what?
There's nothing that's I mean, this isn't, you've been through the process before, and
I have, but I don't remember.
it'll
how
look
we
very similar.
divided our,
Yeah, I mean, it
focus.
changes based on what we want to query and what we're looking to query. What we talked about in the last meeting, I think, was that, I mean, of course, we'll query demographic information, and they are also looking for a representative pool of respondents through their process, which they always do. So they want to make sure that they have respondents that fit a wide range of demographic categories. And then as we walked through it last time, a lot was focused on programs, and I believe that the intention that we all expressed was that, given the work that we're doing with the building here downtown, that we are looking generally to survey on what is the function, purpose, and desire of the community around what does the library look like downtown. I
understand that.
Yeah.
And I've had requests from people in a certain age group, older people, and that's a population that's increasing for us.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so those are areas that I want to be sure we cover too. in
Yeah,
terms of
absolutely.
what people need, not just handicapped people, but what do people need that we might be missing?
Services.
Yeah, services and help. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which I think is a great thing, and it was something that we actually asked, and I remember one of the findings, of course, is that there wasn't, which is one of the things that sort of always surprises everyone, is that there wasn't a lot of feedback on what we weren't offering, even when we asked.
Right.
Right.
Well, people aren't always that imaginative on their own behalf.
Well, that's right.
Right.
But unfortunately, there are a lot of people who contact us, so we want to be sure that they get a chance to voice their feelings.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and also Josie has pointed out that I was mistaken. It's John Cavanagh. So just for the record. Oh, sorry. I forgot that I'm leading this part of the meeting. I'm just staring happily at this.
Is it November?
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about in December is, of course, the ongoing discussion of Josie's evaluation process. And I say Josie's, but it's really the person in the director's role. So in December, we can expect the final report from the two people that we're working with, Sarah and Carrie, to give us not just kind of an overview of what the process is going to be like, but also the tools that we'll be using, and kind of like a roadmap for how we will evaluate the director this year and then going forward. So you can expect that in December.
Jamie, do you expect that before our meeting, we'll discuss at the December meeting or the January?
I expect them to give a presentation in December, so I would guess that we'll get something for board packet that's ready to look at, but I don't know how drafty it will be at that point.
Okay.
I think we can push for it to be pretty final.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It
time.
seems like they have all the pieces.
Yeah, agreed. Anything I missed?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Of course, these fell asleep, so I talked on here. Okay. Okay, Josie.
And I have in front of you a printed director's report because of vacation. I did not get it done until I got back, so it's in front of you. But also, we highlighted it. So we have the U of M event with Congressman John Lewis is Monday the 27th. He will not be here. I want to make that really clear. But Nate Powell will be here, the illustrator of this comic. He will be here that day at 1 o'clock in the multipurpose room with the presentation. And then he'll go from here over to Hill Auditorium, which is where Congressman Lewis will be. But we will live stream that event upstairs in the board, in this room, sorry. In this room at 7. So it's first come, first serve, no tickets for anyone interested in being able to listen to that conversation and not want to be at Hill or not want to take the chance of not getting in at Hill.
Will that be the only way it's distributed locally?
I also think, is it being live streamed at EMU?
There are a couple other locations, right?
It's being live streamed at EMU. Ipsy Library was involved in it. But
How about CTN or anything like that?
There's no television broadcast.
Okay.
right, so here and or at Hill or at EMU if you're interested. But we're very pleased to be able to have Nate Powell here earlier in that day, and then be able to have be able to witness that conversation live, even if we're not necessarily in the space. So I'm really happy about that.
Are we not able to put it on the web? Is that?
I'm not sure what the
We
agreement is.
can't-
It's probably not. It's not ours.
Broadcast.
Yeah, it's not ours.
But they get. Is it coming from? Is it coming from Christina Hamilton?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, they were originally going to have a
Yeah.
Jumbotron when it was going to be earlier in the year,
Yeah.
but now that the weather has changed, it will be
right.
available.
Yeah.
Select interior places.
Okay.
And
That
ours
makes
is actually
sense.
on the fourth floor, not in.
So I was right,
You're right.
and good. I thought it was the boardroom.
Since it's a stamps thing,
Yeah, why?
they always record them. So even if it's not live streamed, you could always watch it on play
Well,
afterwards.
she told me they were live streaming now. That's why I'm
Oh,
asking.
well then, I don't
Yeah.
know.
We're doing an event with them later that is going to be live streamed, but
Who's we?
UMS. But sorry, the
Yeah.
other we that I represent.
Not this week.
UMS is doing an event with them in January. So, and I'm told they're live streaming online. So I don't know. It's just but the agreement may be different. That's why I'm asking.
Josie, will Nate be available to sign books, or how is his visit going to be structured?
I'm not sure if that's planned for part of the event or not.
Okay.
We can know that before,
That-
but I don't know it right
I
now.
think there's going to be a signing at the comic book place.
Oh, at Baltimore Midnight.
Right,
Okay.
Baltimore. Because perhaps a signing at Baltimore Midnight.
I think they're doing a signing there right now.
Okay.
You know, I'm not going to answer for him, but if somebody walked up to him with a comic book and a pen, he'd probably sign it.
I think there are a lot of families in Ann Arbor with the series.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Okay,
We'll
thank you.
we'll see. These are covers of some of the books that were published and launched on November 5th from Fifth Avenue Press. So I thought it'd be fun to see some of the covers if you hadn't seen them. The initiatives and projects underway. Just to give you an update on how things are going with the Mailcat being offline, we have seen an increase of traditional ILL volume from about 20 items a week to 150 per week. So we're adjusting to that, and we'll continue to as the next couple of months or a few months goes by. It's not something we can't handle or deal with. It does mean a little bit more of a wait for the patron, but it's still we're getting things for people, which is important for you to know. O'Neill Construction is here this evening. Will Gordon's here this evening to talk to you about the assessment and his estimations of different options concerning this building. So I know we're all eager for that, so we'll just keep going. And then you've all spoken about the EPIC MRA survey with John Kavanaugh, which will occur in February of 2018. And you're working toward those questions, and you heard that process. This is a summary of public and staff comments. This was something that was done. It was a happy trails to Ira Lax, who retired from the library, And we put it out, and it just got love, so much love. And we're so glad. It couldn't have happened to a nicer person. So when Ira's retired from the library, and so I won't read them, but just so you see it. These are librarians loving the library. Librarians go into libraries whenever they travel. I do it. And so we had a librarian at our ferry door, and she tweeted, posted a picture of the ferry door and her response to that. And also somebody else talking about coming into town and getting a library card. Like, it was a priority, first thing they did when they moved here. And I can attest to that. I've done that. I've moved a lot in my life over the years, and that was always a first stop. So I understand how that feels. This is local history photographs put up and people responding to them. In both these cases, the responders were the little girls. And one of them was like, "That's me, I can't believe it, but that's me at Safety Town." And then another one was a pumpkin at Northeast Branch before it was Trevorwood. And the little girl said, "I know that's me." And she still lives here, so thought you'd like to see those.
That's cool.
This is about, we had a costume contest, and a family dressed up as characters in Ben Hatke's Legends of Zeta, Space Girl comic book. So we took a picture and we sent it out to Ben, and this was his response. So it comes around full circle. It's great fun. And this was a very interesting occurrence that happened online this past month. A guy named Andre Walker decided to go out and say nobody goes to libraries anymore, close the public ones, and put the books in schools. And he wishes he hadn't said that, really. The responses from all over the world were fast and furious and in the thousands. These are some from Ann Arbor to him about this library. So we pull those because we thought you'd want to see that. One of them was, if you're an adult who uses, art, if you're an adult who uses the library, appreciate you, AADL and IPSI Library, best programming at Adults Love Libraries. And another person said, "I visit the library at least once a week, not to mention daily use of my e-library. It's my favorite tax-funded service." And someone says to me, people ask where you're going on your vacation. My response, the library. And I'm laughing because I went into libraries on my vacation. So this library. So you should know that happened. And then the next page are some more things that were said about what Westgate was hopping this afternoon. Whoever says people don't go to libraries hasn't been to this one. And this was all in response to Andre Walker. And then down at the bottom is his response back. "Dear at library users, I surrender." I surrender. So he had to backtrack and take it all back. And he did it graciously, I have to say. And he took all the responses weren't as polite as these, I'll say that. So there's some really interesting librarians out there. This was Halloween, and this little boy was having his photograph made here in our free photo booth. And so you should, there were like 46 or 47 photographs that went up online for families and little children from the photo booth, and so we can talk about that. And that's my report. And including in this report are some more library statements, people's comments into us and their answers. And this will go online with the packet now, so it'll be part of the online record. I just didn't have it ready until today, so thank you for that. We did have a list of top 10 programs for the month of October, and I will say this, the Charles Block, right?
Oh, Charles Blow.
Charles Blow, excuse me, I'm doing it too. That event was 1,100 people, and while it wasn't held at the library was part of the sponsorship for it. And I can say, someone who participated in it, it was fantastic. It was amazing, and I'm glad and to thank you to the folks at the university who reached out to us and included us in the possibility of that. We're very proud to have been a part of something like that. But then we had 9 other events that brought in numbers of people, great numbers of people. But what's interesting about the list is you have the Blow event, which is obviously an adult event at Rackham, and then preschool story time. had huge numbers of people at Mounts Creek that month, all on the same list of top 10 programs. So that's the public library. That's wonderful.
I just laughed because if you're listing the numbers, I mean, Rackham holds 1,100 people, so that's definitely.
People
gonna
were
be
lined
on the
up
list.
around the walls.
Yeah.
It was really.
Rackham holds how many?
1,150 people.
Yes.
And you were there. It was
I was
full.
there.
We
It
were
was
there.
full. Yeah, it was full. So that's my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we move on now to our monthly revisiting of strategic plan goal 3.3, the downtown library. So Will Gordon joins us this evening to deliver some long-awaited information.
Thank you, Will.
Good evening. How am I doing with this? Okay. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't touch it. Last time I was here, we talked a little bit about 4 scenarios, cost estimates that we were putting together. This is the next step. So we've put these numbers together for you tonight. I want you to know that the first scenario is the reserve study scenario, which is simply maintaining this building
This.
for the next 30 years. How do I
Just gonna give it.
Okay, so scenario 1. Couple of things before I get started on this. We are pretty good as a construction company with putting together construction numbers, construction cost estimates. What we're not very good at is after we build something, we kind of leave and somebody else takes care of it for a while. So we don't really know what maintenance costs are. So we brought in this group, they're out of Wisconsin, Reserve Advisors. We've worked with them here before in Ann Arbor, and they put together the scenario 1, which is the full reserve study. What they're telling us is over the next 30 years, it'll cost you about $10.4 million to maintain this building. And when I say maintain it, I'm talking about survival, bread and water stuff. There are no improvements included in that number. There are no upgrades included in that number. There are no surprises included in that number. So
You mean if an elevator goes down? Is that what you mean by surprise?
that's correct.
Okay.
This is keeping your building dry and safe is the way I look at it, right? Not safe from a public safety standpoint, but safe in that the elements aren't getting to the structure and deteriorating it.
Well, actually, your numbers are even less than what we thought.
Well, this is just scenario 1.
This is scenario 1. And I want to be careful with scenario 1. I don't necessarily agree with all the numbers that the reserve study group has put out. We're meeting with them over the next 2 weeks to discuss them. And I want to show you, for example, one of the things that I didn't like were the windows. Their opinion of the windows is that they are good to fair. I know from being in here that in some cases there's water problems with some of the windows. And that to me is in the category of good or fair. The other thing I didn't like is if you look into their report, they are suggesting that over the next 30 years, you'll spend a little over $350,000 on window replacement. That's a number that they use. They take square foot of glass and then apply a square foot number to it. And if you look in these pictures, the one upper left, that is a curtain wall system. You cannot apply their numbers to a 3 or 4 story glass structure like that. And if you look at the lower picture, you can see that your windows, I mean, that is projecting out. That's almost, it's a window structure. It's not, you know, it's not a window in the way they classify windows. And then you'll see also in that lower picture, you guys have those, what we call like clear story windows at the top. And I know that's one of the places we're seeing some water problems, that you can't apply their numbers to those type of window situations. So we have some things in here that we're meeting with them to discuss, to understand where they came up with their numbers. I think, though, that there's the numbers, their 10.4 is an okay place to start for the decision-making process. There may be some fluctuation in it as we dig in with them, but I think for the decision-making process, it's thoughtful enough that we could share it with you tonight.
Well,
Yes.
Can I make a point, though? What I hear you saying is that, so there are some quibbles that you have with it, and the windows do seem like a substantial one to me. $350,000 seems low to me for windows for a building this size, period, let alone with the complexity of some of the windows we have. But the second thing I hear you saying is that figure includes accepting our current level of risk around things like our septic system. Look, I said septic. It doesn't include being proactive to reduce risk around things that we are currently uncomfortable with.
That's correct. It does, over the next 30 years, replace some of your pumps. But this building, and I've spent some time since I was here last time, a great deal of time on your septic system, and I don't want to take too much of the time, but it's very unusual that, I mean, you have 5 different pumps in this building. And in one case, the easternmost part of the building goes into a crock, and then that pumps all the way over to the western side of the building, where it's collected again in a crock and pumped back out into the city sewer. I mean, that gives you double the exposure in a pump failure, right?
Yes.
So I won't spend any more time on that. I know you guys know you have some issues there, and this scenario 1 doesn't directly address fixing that infrastructure.
Just fixing it when it fails, basically.
Right. So, scenario number 2, I think, well, let me finish up with scenario 1. I think it's important to point out that when you look at this reserve study, they do show that after a 30-year period, you would still have in reserves $981,000 after 30 years to start your next 30 years with. Scenario 2 is strictly an interior renovation. This would be removing all your ceilings, new lighting, new paint, a minimal amount of new walls and the demolition of some old walls for programming, new flooring. I would call it cosmetics of the building only. When we were putting this number together, we decided we would be a little irresponsible if we didn't have a scenario 2A, which would be replacing any mechanical, electrical, and plumbing items that we would uncover during the removal of the ceilings and the removal of the walls. So what we've done is scenario 2A would include the upgrading of a lot of your mechanical systems and the piping and infrastructure that we could get to when we exposed these ceilings. However, it would not be a complete gut and redo of your mechanical infrastructure. So it's important to keep that in mind.
So I want to can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So why present us with scenario 2 if it's so unlikely to be how it works out for us?
That's a good question. We're just trying to give you options, and that was originally one of the options we came up with,
No, I
which
totally
was just
understand.
paint and carpet kind of option.
Yeah.
And then we felt like it's a terrible option.
Yeah.
So we invented option 2A.
Okay, thank you for that.
So here's your kind of ranges that we put together for these 2 options. Number 2, again, being the just paint and carpet, new ceilings, new lighting, renovation. We're $17.9 million to $22.4 million. And then 2A with some of the mechanical and electrical and plumbing upgrades I've talked about. It wouldn't be a complete upgrade, but it would be fairly major. You can see it's 19.5 million to 25.1 million is our range. Now, we've also provided a spreadsheet with a lot more detail that kind of includes a mid-range number. It shows you the square foot numbers that we use to come up with this, and you can manipulate that however you need to as we go on. For example, on the next few scenarios, there's square footages that if you decide you want to be smaller or larger, less renovation, more addition, you'll be able to manipulate those numbers.
And again, these costs are over a course of 10
years.
10 years, right?
Yeah, this, we've included in those ranges, we've included for some inflation over time, so.
Okay.
Also, I think it's important that we point out in those numbers, those are not strict construction hard costs. We did add design, we did add furniture, and we did add some AV and technology.
So based on what you showed us with the amount we'd have left in reserve, if we do nothing but just renovate the building and don't raise any more money, we aren't going to be able to afford to keep up this building in 10 years. Am I reading that correctly?
I heard it was going to be an annual cost of $300,000. I just took 10 million divided by 30, and I guess my question is, Bill, is that, what is our, didn't we do an estimate, a facilities estimate?
Well, we were told 500,000
Yes,
a year.
and that's something I'll tell you. I mean, we when we saw the reserve study, I mean, we quibbled with the cost too, because what we've looked at, we look at this being a $500,000 a year,
Right. And that was
to take care of it, keep it safe, and keep the weather out of it. But it's about what you do, and we were better equipped to think this thing through in terms of the windows, the roof, that sort of thing. So that's yeah.
Okay, I'm glad their number didn't come higher than our number.
Right. It did not come higher.
So scenario 3 was the easiest for us to do, which is simply the building that we're in, this existing building goes away, and ground up construction of a new 120,000 square foot building. So that, hold on to your hats, is, and there's quite a spread here, but that's a $42.2 million to $62.5 million project. And I'll tell you that you're probably not going to get what you want for $42.2 million. We know we can build you 120,000 square feet for that. Whether it works for you or not, I don't think so. And we can build you a $70 million project as well. But I really think, the range is good. When you look at the middle and when you look at that spreadsheet, middle to upper middle is probably where you would fall with the programming that you want.
But you have factored building cost alone, not rental space for being out of this.
We
None
don't,
of that is included.
The only soft costs that we included
They aren't
would
very
be
soft.
a designer and and then some of what we call the FF&E, which is the furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. So, nothing.
And to build a building of the mid-range building of the size that you're anticipating, it takes how long?
From start of
to finish?
design or
From
just construction?
Demolition to completion.
I would say 3 years from go.
Okay.
That's start of design to completion of construction. So from start of demolition to open the doors would probably 2 years. So a year of design, 2 years of actual work in the field.
Okay.
That's conservative. So the next scenario that it wasn't as easy for us to deal with was coming up with the combination of new construction and renovation. And this may be totally off base and the wrong way to look at this, but what we did was, in this particular setup, we've used the 1991 edition is what we thought we would save. And then we had to save the 1975 edition because it holds the 91 edition up. And then the 1958 building would be demolished and you would build a new addition in that footprint. So right now you have 111,000 square feet. We've added another just under 10,000 square feet just because we thought that would be, you'd probably want to be slightly bigger. I don't know if that's the right direction or not. And again, this goes back to those numbers. Those square foot numbers will allow you to manipulate that in the direction that you think you should go for size.
So our sewage goes through both buildings, though, right? The 91, 58, right? Does it
Yeah,
snake
so
through
it
both?
comes down the 91 into a mechanical room with a sump in it, which is a big hole in the ground
Right.
with pumps in it. And then it pumps from there to another sump and pumps that are in the 1958 edition, and then it pumps from there out into Fifth Street.
Fifth Avenue.
So leading to that, that's a really good question because in the new building scenario, when you start from scratch, do you get rid of all things sewage? Do you get rid of all the crocs? So the threat then goes away as long as you get the
Completely.
building right. Right? I mean, because it's a threat in terms of cost. It's this, and this is something like maybe we want Len to weigh in too because
Yeah.
we have Len. Okay, so that time bomb, what that costs us if we assign potential cost to that threat, that's something we want to consider as we weigh the decisions, weigh these options.
I don't think I'm clear, though, on scenario 4 in the sewage crock situation. Would we be able to deal with them?
Are we just getting rid of
Entirely?
one crock?
Or, yeah, exactly.
So what we planned for scenario 4 would be a total gut of 1991 and a total gut of 1975. We would, ideally, everyone would move out of the library and you'd go away for 2 years and you'd come back with a new addition and a totally renovated structure on the east side. So yes, it would take care of your sanitary problem.
Okay.
Am I misremembering that the city itself has old sewage pipes down that we're dealing with? Is that wrong?
The city does have old sewage pipes on a lot of the streets.
On my street, for example.
Well, and I think underneath this building, there are old pipes.
I thought that was just under Fifth Avenue. That's the city.
When that
I
was
could be wrong.
redone.
That's something I assumed, but maybe I'm wrong.
I do know that some of the sanitary leads, I believe you have 2 sanitary leads into the building, and they both go into Fifth Street. And one of them is a clay pipe, which would indicate it's
It's old.
Yeah, it's very old. And then
And would it be up to us to take care of that, or is that a city requirement?
yeah, it's up to the property owner to take care of what we call the lead. So from the main in the street back to the building would be the library's responsibility.
But the clay pipes are there. We can't do anything about that.
No, the clay pipe, we could replace the clay pipe up to the main in the street. My guess is that main in the street is,
Also a clay pipe.
it could be.
That's what I
I
think
don't know the answer.
we were told at one point. Okay, that's enough.
Do we know what the date of those clay pipes is? The 20th century, 19th century?
I heard 19th.
Really?
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I'm not certain. I know that I've never installed a clay pipe.
You aren't old enough to have done a 19th century.
No, not quite.
Do people flush diapers down clay pipes? I think that's what caused our.
It
One of
can't,
them,
it has caused our problems in the past, diapers and other things, yeah.
Well, where are we sitting now? Are we in 91?
Yes.
We're
No.
at 58.
You're
We're
in
in
the basement of
58.
58.
Okay, that's what I thought. But we're close to 91. 91 is that way.
91 is, yeah.
By the
Yeah.
elevator,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So, one of the attractive things about scenario 4 potentially is that, you know, we maybe could preserve some level of operation without having to rent outside space, but you made it sound like it would be a lot simpler to do a construction project
Well-
if an operating library weren't in the space.
So we're early in this process.
Yeah.
And so these numbers that we're showing you, the 28.7 million to 39.4 million, is us getting the whole piece of property
Yeah.
for 2 years. Now, there's a long way to go here, right? You have to weigh the rental of opening something somewhere else. We could look at phasing it. I'm going to tell you that this is a really difficult, the scenario that I've laid out here is difficult to phase because you do have equipment in this side that services that side. For
Yeah.
example, the sanitary problem would be huge.
Right.
We would have to run a temporary line from your Crocs over the 91 somewhere to keep you up and running while this was demolished.
Right.
Because this is unfortunately, the end of the line for your sanitary issue. Now, all that can be done. There's not a lot of value
Right,
in it,
exactly.
in those dollars, but there's certainly ways to phase things and keep people in here and keep it open. It's difficult.
I think we needed to hear that, so thank you.
So that's scenario 4 costs right there. That's the range that we've come up with. And I'll quickly just run down, So scenario 1 was the feasibility study, or the 30 years, 10.4 million to just keep you alive here in this building. And then scenario 2 was just the interior renovation, paint, carpet, new ceilings, light fixtures. Scenario 2A adds the mechanical with that, and I want to warn everybody that's not a full mechanical, brand-new system. It's somewhere in between what you have now, and it would be like a interior tenant build-out. I don't know if you've ever rented another space where it's, your new ductwork you're getting some new equipment down in the basement, some new rooftop equipment, but I don't want to sell that or let you believe that that's a complete MEP renovation.
It also, if I'm not mistaken, 2A doesn't include anything to do with the windows, does it?
No, there's no exterior
nothing.
in 2A.
Okay, that's
a
what I
good
wanted to
thing
make sure.
point out.
Nothing.
We're not touching anything.
No
on the
roof,
exterior.
no windows, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then number 3, again, is the brand-new building. Number 4, we just discussed, which is partial renovation and partial new building addition. So,
Which does include roof and windows.
oh, absolutely.
Yes,
Yep.
right.
Okay,
Great.
other questions?
So we're not too far off from the numbers that we saw 10 years ago. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay.
That was $65 million building, and it was a much bigger building. Just the plan was a much bigger than 120,000 square feet, and it was $65 million. The only other figure I can remember off the top of my head that might be of interest to you was it was going to be $3 million to move out into rented space for 2 years and operate in a downtown location for 2 years. So that's what that was going to cost then. So just so you know what that was going to, but we had those arrangements, that plan had been made and was ready to go. So we would have to do something similar.
And at that time, we had a specific location that
We
was
did.
possible.
We did. Yes, we did.
Well, and we also in terms of the $65 million building, we had a list of things that we wanted to get for that $65 million, things that, I mean, we have not specified what we're trying, you gave us square foot numbers, but
Right.
we didn't give you a list of spaces that we
Right.
wanted to support new types of activity in the library.
Right.
Yes.
So we should be thinking bigger numbers.
Well, it's not necessarily. I mean, it's about what else happens in the space, how the space is arranged. It's about the design, and I mean, it can be what they've outlined. It can be larger. It depends. It doesn't need to be larger than you need it to be, and so it's about what do you want to have happen in the space. We already know to survive in it, we can't keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
We have to stop doing a lot of things to just survive in it because we're outgrowing it all the time. But what is that future? What does that look like? And a performance venue I mean, I'll use the word auditorium because that's what it is going to be.
Right.
We know we could fill up a 400-seat auditorium on a regular basis in this library.
Right.
And that space, if it came in if you put it in a 120,000 square foot building, you would be having to sacrifice in some other ways here for your space. So that's the additional space.
Right.
So you think about what square footage is that? How's that laid out? That kind of thing. So.
But one thing I was struck by, I didn't actually attend the Halloween party, which I was sorry, but when I looked at the photos, I just thought how much staff work must have gone into arranging that space to support this activity, which seemed great to me, to the
Very
community.
busy.
And how great it was that people could walk in and see that and have all that kind of activity. But I thought, oh my gosh, they built a stage and moved things and
That's right.
all
And
those pieces. because
every
our
event
building
that
is
happens in
spot.
the lobby requires all the takeout of what's there, including the desk, and arranging for the stage. And the puppet theater was the same
Yeah.
type of staging, the Halloween event.
Yep.
That you're right. I mean, and we have to put it somewhere, so it goes upstairs to the third floor for the most part, because that's where we have space for it.
And then it also means that we're limited to having things on the first floor that can be moved, right?
Correct. That's right. That's why
I mean,
the
that's why
tools
we have
collection.
your body bags.
Yes.
Because we can move them.
That's one of my favorite comments from the retreat. I still think of that.
So we need to think about library use in the next 10 years, and then we also should consider the data that we looked at from SEMCOG with a growing senior population and then a growing younger population, because we were seeing a little bit of a bump with more children in the community. And I think that's reflective of what the schools are looking at too, is how do we accommodate more children? I know they spent, I think maybe $3 million on portables.
Yeah.
And then running bonds and trying to figure out how to accommodate a growing city. So we have to imagine what the library would look like in 10 years if we could meet those needs. Okay. That's pretty easy.
We'll have help
We can do that.
envisioning all
Yeah, I mean, well,
We have all these talented people who work here, you know.
a growing city should have a growing tax base. So there are a lot of conversations that we can have about the money and those projections. We've had many of them already. It's such an interesting problem, opportunity. How do we serve? I think we're asking a lot of the right questions, and to me, population growth, population change, and then the dialogue with, I don't want to call them stakeholder groups. There was opposition in 2012. I want to hear from those people straight up about their concerns. What's the opposition feel like right now? Is that all tax-based? Is it about increase in taxes, or is it about something else? I don't know. I mean, I can fathom, but I just don't know. I would be interested to hear from those people. And
I'd be interested to hear if those people have come to Westgate and
Yeah.
what their experiences are with the library and how that's changed since we pursued this
Well,
in
yeah, and we
2012.
didn't have to raise taxes to do that, right? And so we made some choices, and those choices mean you don't spend over here, so we spend over there. I just think it's a conversation as we decision make, bringing oppositional voices in sooner rather than later makes more sense to me They're not necessarily going to become advocates or change their minds, but they can at least inform the decision-making process. That's an interesting way to approach. Based on Will's presentation, my gut says it's new library, but I understand that's a decision that's far out. But doesn't it? So Will, it's a lot more money. It's a lot more money, but there are all these costs and risks with all the other options that just seem so risky for the library, for a public entity. Like, so we hold our feet to the fire, we figure out how to pay for it. It's going to be a lot of work to get to the new library. It's climbing a mountain, but it also seems like what we get for that is transformative and it serves the needs of the public versus if we stay here, if this building looks the same way in 30 years, if we haven't painted or recarpeted, nobody's going to want to come here. I don't want to.
Or even if we paint or recarpet, like that scenario to me is like, no, we're not going to spend so much money just to put a Band-Aid on this building. I don't think.
Yeah, it begs the question, what's the point? Is that what you want your library to do for you or be for you? I mean, that's not a question you can answer for us. That's a question that the library staff and the board and the community need to take up. But I'm interested to know what you think too.
In listening to you talk, one of the things I think I should point out is in the renovation, new addition scenario, you're really only talking about 40,000 square foot of new building if we save the 91 and the 75. And after looking at this, there's not another good spot to try to save a large chunk of building. So 40,000 square foot you would get to lay out any way you wanted, and you're trapped in the other 80. So keep that in mind.
With sewage crops.
Well, I want to go back to your point before, which was, we want to bring in voices, and that's what we're going to do with the Epic MRA survey for sure. Like, we'll definitely hear from people about that.
Can I ask a smaller question? Josie and others, what impact is rising enrollment at U of M? What have we seen in the impact on the library in the last couple? It's been epic. It's been record-breaking numbers, the last 5 years? Do we see a change?
I don't think we've tracked it that way because we don't identify people come in the door as being students at U of M or not students at U of M unless they say they're students at U of M. I can't tell you that. I know that many students tell us they use Trevorwood and downtown quite a bit. And our hours are really good for them. And it's in the Wi-Fi and the general environment. So but it's anecdotal. Can't tell you.
So it sounds like at this point, the best thing we could say is that it tends to be concentrated in the areas that are the closest to our campuses, and that we see increased use as the student population rises. I was thinking about tax bases because that doesn't affect our. Well, it does if they're paying. If they're not living in dorms, it does.
Right, but there was just a really nice summary of the student development, the housing development craze, and which would indicate, like those private developments are paying taxes in contrast to the dorms. So, and there's, only enough residential housing for like less than the first year population. So then they have to live somewhere that's paying taxes. Do we have, I feel like I'm losing the thread here. Sorry.
So if we're looking at, say, 60 to 80 million, and then we're looking at property that's been going up, I think the McKinley Center was just sold for around 60 million. I think Ed and I chatted about this. And this is the McKinley building on, what is that?
Is it Town Center?
Yes. And I think they're building up, too, on that. So this isn't really far off on the idea of a multi-level building downtown being around 60 to 80 million. No.
I don't recall that being a terrific building, though, either.
No.
Although I can't.
It's attached to a parking structure.
Right. So that's what was interesting about it. So, and it's there's an active basement. So we know there's a startup and then a couple of businesses in the basement. And then restaurants on the retail, on the street level, if they're looking to add, I don't know, whatever they're looking to add. I just think it's interesting to try to track what downtown is building. You know, I know there's a lot of discussion about the library lot, but if we're talking about a capital cost going into existing buildings downtown, it gives us a little bit, I think, a little bit of context to peg our costs against.
Yeah, the problem with that is there aren't a lot of
New construction.
comparable buildings.
Yeah.
Even
Right.
office buildings
Right.
aren't being built downtown.
Right.
And you
Yeah.
guys are not student housing, so
Right.
that
Right.
seems
Yeah.
to be
Right.
the only thing that's getting built.
It's too bad the Y lot structure didn't go forward, because
Oh.
that would be sort of a comparable. Although I think that building is smaller, the lot is smaller on the old Y
A
lot.
little bit smaller.
Right. Interesting. Okay. We need to do a lot more homework, I think. A lot more outreach.
And Will, you spent a lot of time clearly thinking about this, and thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to say to us that didn't fit into your report, that you just think, oh, I really like the library board to know this one little? Philip?
I just want to caution you on the reserve study numbers. I'm not completely comfortable with those, and until we vet that out fully with the group that put it together.
Okay.
And that's the only word of caution I've got. I think their numbers are low in some of the categories. And the example I used with windows, I guarantee you that's low. So,
And the roof too, right? I know a local high school, I think their replacement roof is going to be about 5 million, so I'm kind of alone.
So we reached out to some roofers, and it depends on what we call scope, right? And
Okay.
are you talking just the membrane? Well, then it's probably the right number. But you've got copings, you've got flashings, you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of accessories, hatches, things that have to be installed and flashed properly that those guys have not accounted for.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
I want to say, Jamie, I love this, that every month we talk about this. It's in chunks, it's digestible, we take on an issue, we learn something. I voice my opinion, I throw it out there because it's, to me, it's the, sharing our opinions, we're going to have to do that at some point. So I just kind of do it so I can go back and have a record of what my first reaction was.
Thank you.
Jamie, can I ask the speaker to come back up for a second?
Of course.
Realize that I let the opportunity pass to try a Plan B or Plan 6 or whatever. The one that wasn't discussed, which is building someplace else. That there is a certain intrinsic value in this building if it were to be sold, which would not only develop some cash, even if it were to be demolished by someone else. And was there any examination of the cost alternatives to building on a flat site? For example, building across the street, or building on another site prepared by somebody else for us, or where we prepared it within the downtown area generally. That is, what would it cost to simply build a new building without having to demolish this one?
We didn't look at that, but that would be fairly easy for us to pull the demolition out and give you those numbers. And it wouldn't change those ranges drastically at all.
All right.
I think the demo numbers that we were working with were in the $2 million range. So just as kind of an order of magnitude. I think the real benefit would be you could build somewhere else. You don't have to worry then about renting another space, or you can keep this open till the day the other building's done, obviously.
All right, thank you. Because I think, if I might suggest, that what we haven't done is to start from scratch and make the decision that we have selected to build here in build, rebuild, remodel, whatever we do, because it's the best alternative, and not because it's the only alternative. And I think that it's very realistic to try to investigate what the benefits would be for a different location, both financial and in terms of our service to the public.
Do you mean another location downtown
Yes.
primarily?
Well, no, I don't mean another one. I don't care where it is. I think that our constituency would prefer that it were downtown, and if I had to guess, the trustees would prefer that it were downtown as well as, and I expect the library staff would prefer that. However, even that needs to be an affirmative decision. You have to decide, you have to be able to demonstrate that downtown is the best place to put it. And within downtown, you have to demonstrate that this is the best place to put it. There will be, in the next 30 years, dozens of demolitions, of new construction, of slight modifications in street patterns, major modifications perhaps in street patterns. There will be changes in surface transportation. There will be changes in commuter patterns. There will be changes in what both the private sector and the university do with everything from classroom space to office space to government space. And if you presume that we have anywhere from a 5-year to a 30-year time period to come up with the best result for where is the library going to be, you may wind up with a much better library. To presume that our hurry is to do the best job and not necessarily simply to resolve the many questions that exist with this building. You will recall that the previous location was on East Huron. That this location was, in many regards, an accident. The school board owned it already, or the ladies' library. There was a library here.
Yep.
It is, in my own opinion, and I haven't been private about this, it is not, if you just had to pick where ought the library to be, I think it ought to be on East Liberty Street and not here. In terms of street pattern, in terms of visibility to the public, in terms of access to the university with whom we have a lot of joint projects, in terms of street patterns, in terms of traffic, Liberty Street would be a better site. I think that it is well worth our while to take a serious look at where the library ought to be and where it could be if we had adequate time, and I believe personally that the library does have adequate time to review what its alternatives are. The longer the time period is, the more opportunity you have to develop private, non-tax-based funding, to develop partnerships with everything from foundations to the university to 100 different possibilities, simply to see who else is interested in a library building, what kind of services we will be providing in 10 years, and to whom, and how are they going to get there. So I think there's an enormous range of things that have to be considered other than simply what do we do with this building. I mean, somebody said already, paint carpet for a while. But I think that the trustees and the library director and our community at large has a responsibility to have a bigger view of what we're doing and to plan for a future that will produce a building that will service us for another 65 or 70 years. And I am not at all convinced that this location is the place to do that.
Thanks, Ed. I'm glad that you added those thoughts to this discussion. It's important to make sure that we're thinking about more than just what we've been presented with on the page, I think.
And it's hard to know, to Colleen's point, how do we bring in the people who are not going to be in favor of whatever we want to do until we decide what we want to do?
Well, yeah.
People don't know what they're against until they know what somebody else is for.
So we have to really be for something, I think. I think we have to coalesce around a vision.
Right.
I feel like we're talking about numbers and options, but we have not yet defined what our vision is for the library that would make it worth spending that kind of money.
Yeah, and I think that we need to do that next, but I think it was important for us to understand what the landscape and reality of this building is, for sure.
And then we'll have a better sense of things once the EPIC MRA survey comes back and we can see maybe the differences in opinion from the last survey results and then this one too. I mean, before I would like to give the public a chance to understand, I guess follow along with us as we learn what the limitations are with this building and the challenges that staff are facing to do the programs that they want to do here. And then understand O'Neill's numbers, see the results from the survey, and kind of build, I guess, a bigger picture around what our choices really are before we assume that there will be opposition. Because, I mean, if there is going to be opposition, I would hope it would be informed opposition. And I hope it'd be an opposition where we, as trustees, can engage with community organizers and say, well, this is what we know. This is what we've presented to the public. This is why we record and broadcast our board meetings so that all this information is as accessible to the public as it is to us. So I think as we prepare, we should also expect folks to be advocates too. So, I'd hate to think that we would make decisions based on or limit ourselves in any way as we think of these things.
By the way, I think the presumption that the opposition needs to be informed is false. Opposition doesn't have to be informed. Close your eyes and think of the current political environment.
Right.
And tell
Not
me
what I
what part
said.
of it is informed. All it has to be is negative, which is what it was last time.
So my point was not to inform the opposition. It's to look historically, and sometimes we nod to history, and to understand, you all lived through that. My question for that past opposition is, what do you think about where we're going? You have opinions, you had opinions, you strong enough to fight about it before. How can you help us come to our own vision? Can you inform that vision? Or is it simply you're going to be opposed to or reactionary to whatever idea we put forth? Which happens sometimes, and we deal with that when it comes. So, no, it's not our job to inform. I think it is our job to do what we're doing with that MRA, and to do exactly what Lynn said.
Be ready. Yeah, I think we'd just be ready.
By the way, if I might add one last comment, and I could talk for an hour on this. Think, again, close your eyes, let's talk about railroad stations. How long have we been working? The last time I took a train was yesterday. What a nightmare. The poor, sorry, excuse for a station. We have been talking for who knows how long. Does anybody know how long we've been talking about station, whether it's going to be here or there?
At least 20 years, right? At least 20 years?
Yeah, well, and we've got nothing, not one thing to show for it. and that each side thinks the other one is wrong. But what it really means to me is that the prevailing affirmative view better be pretty good and have a lot of public weight behind it. But I think it really presents how serious the issue is. And I know, because I still have some scars, that if all I want to talk about is replacing this building, there are lots of people today with a lot of money who still will say no. And that it is much easier for me to appropriate $300,000 a year to paint and carpet, knowing that the answer that we come up with as a board and as a library and as an institution will be a very good, defendable, and presentable answer. It's a big job, but it is doable. Ann Arbor deserves a world-class library. And in my heart, I think it will be extraordinarily difficult to build a world-class library on the site. And to do so, we need to make certain that it is the best site. And as I said, in the next 30 years, they're going to half the downtown will be torn down, and you have lots of sites to choose from.
Great.
So I just need to know, because Ed's asking for something else, and we are trying to move the question along. I don't get a sense that there's an appetite yet on behalf of most of the board members to respond to that question of site, partially because we don't have actual information to look at in front of us. But we can't simply, Ed can't say that, and we can't not do anything about it. So I guess, Josie, I need to understand I guess my fellow board members, my fellow trustees, I need to understand if there is an appetite to move forward on that comment that Ed is making. And if so, how are we going to do it? Because I want to keep this process moving, and I don't want to get to 18 months from now and have Ed saying the same thing and then having us to go back to the drawing board.
Yes. When we first started talking about this process, I did indicate a step in it where we needed to do a realty review.
Okay.
And that we needed to look at all available property. And I did say all available property in our district that would hold a building of the size we had, from 120,000 to 160,000 square feet, which was that range.
Okay.
Right? And to at least be able to say, we looked, we considered, and these were the options at the time in which you look. And Ed's comment about it's going to change. Of course, it's going to change.
Yeah.
But there are places, and I think by saying you're going to look everywhere, then you look everywhere. Even if your intention is to keep it downtown, but you still look everywhere. Because I've had people come to me and tell me I don't know if I should put this out there. The library should buy a very popular recreational facility that borders Gallup Park and the river and turn it into a library location. So that's going to come to you. Those types of things are going to come to you. That's not currently for sale, so I don't think it will come our way. But Ed's right. I mean, you look at everything, and it doesn't take long. I could start that process tomorrow with a phone call and of a survey of all available property, the size of that property, and what the costs were, and then you can talk about it. But you still don't know what you want to put on it.
Yeah.
And I think you must know first
You want to go through
what you want to put on it. And then, as I said in what I wrote to you all earlier, then you decide where. Because you need to know what you're going to do, and then you decide where.
That was one of the shortcomings people told me about our plans last time, is they didn't know what
are we getting
we
for
were
our
offering.
money? Right.
What would be more or better.
And to your mind, that process comes after what, a building program?
Well, it is a building program that informs that
That
process.
informs the
So
process.
what
So
happens
that's when that stuff happens, is after building program.
When you ask the questions in the survey around this process,
Mm-hmm.
and you get that information, my next step was, then you have a library design or planner, depending upon how you want to approach that,
Mm-hmm.
who then comes in and talks with you, looks through this and the staff about the work that happens here. And then you have meetings with different groups in the public about what their hopes are for the library, what they'd love to have happen at the library, and where have they been, what have they seen other places, and then community groups we partner with. If you could do this with the library, what would you need to have at the library in order to do this? Exactly what Ed was talking about. And then a program is strictly a written description of what happens. Then you determine how much square feet you need to actually design such a program. And that's when you decide if an RFP for an architect is determined at that time or not, and how much of that program do you have developed into schematics, something people can see that looks like a building.
Which we did little of last time.
We didn't do it in 12, we did it in 6. And in 6, we made the decision to not go forward because of the economy. And when we came back in 12, the decision was made by the board to not use the plan, the program that was developed. So we had to start from scratch in a bit shorter time frame, and we did not have schematics. I recommend schematics. People want to see something. So,
Jim, let me point out what could be done simply to maybe deal with some of that. To my knowledge, we don't have a whole lot of discussions with the city planning department.
Right.
We do not know, as an institution, what the city's up to. It is the judgment of many that the city downtown is at its limit and needs to push outward and to provide new urban areas that involve both middle and high-density housing and new commercial areas. A library could be a centerpiece of renovation, reconstruction of something going north along the railroad tracks, something looking at Fingerleys, something the very large piece of land there, something currently held by the university conceivably, that's a long shot, that there are many alternatives, but literally a third to a half of everything in downtown will be demolished in the next 30 years, as it has been in the past. And that as it changes, and if you give yourself adequate time to look at what others are doing and to be an active part of that discussion, and to know that we come to the table with $65 million and a centerpiece building, that we have an enormous voice and the support of almost every active part of our community. That if you look to the future, not long term, certainly long term for me, maybe, but for the rest of you guys, you'll be around. That if you understand that planning has to involve the future, and we're talking an immediate present. That's paint and carpet. That I think it's much better if we're going to stay here to justify the paint and carpet till we know what it's going to look like, and then, in my own judgment, tear the damn thing down. But we haven't even started that, and the rush to try to push through another project when the very people that opposed you the last time are still here and alive and kicking, with the very same argument that somebody made fun of up there on the screen an hour ago.
I definitely take your point, but like you said, an hour ago, and we have half an hour to cover. I think we're gonna have a discussion about fines, so I want to bring our discussion to a close. But I think that what I hear from this group of trustees is that we take your point, and like, we want to make sure that we're incorporating thinking not just about what we do with this site, but where the library could be in this process. And it sounds like Josie is suggesting a way that we do that. So I definitely don't get the sense from the trustees that they are like, no, we just stay here. We're only going to look at here. So I think your point is heard.
I'm not sure it is.
I
but-
want to say that when Will got up to speak and he started talking about new building, 120 square foot, I did not presume that he meant here. He kind of talked about it or nodded to the site. That's a presumption. Do we need to do these things like talk to the city? What is? Those are things that are inherent to the process. So there's no acrimony. I want to go back to what Jim said, which is, what does the board think? My expectation was what Josie said, that we're stepping it out, and it's very cart and horse. So Epic MRA is next.
Yeah, right.
And as Josie's point, we could question Josie's point. Okay, should we go start to do a landscape of real estate before we get the Epic MRA data and before we can say we want XYZ? I tend to think no. I think you're right. I agree with you on this one, on that. And if anyone disagrees, we can, maybe there's a middle ground. But I think we're good to move on with the meeting, and everyone had great comments. That's what I think.
I just want to make one comment. I'm fine about the idea of talking about different locations. I agree with what Colleen said, that and you, Ed, that we shouldn't presume it will be here, but I want to go on record, since we've talked about sort of moving. I don't envision a future in which I would ever vote to not have a library downtown.
I agree with you.
That is, if people are thinking we don't need a library downtown, you probably shouldn't vote for me.
Okay. Also, that kind of speculation feel like let's, I like to keep us from speculating too far about going to Fingerly or going to the river or going here or let's just take it one step at a time. Otherwise,
As long as you keep all these options as possibilities.
Right, yeah, I think, exactly. We want to communicate that we're very open to many options at this point.
I do think that, I mean, I agree with Ed, and I think it's interesting to consider what kind of chess piece we are in the game of downtown. But I think the opposite side of the coin, of course, is that we don't want to become a pawn in somebody else's game of redevelopment. And this is, as Josie said, the catbird seat. Everybody wants the slot. We know that. And so I just, I think that there isn't, to some degree, you can take some of you all know that you can take some of the criticism of the last bond issue at face value, and some of it you cannot.
Right.
I mean, that is just the reality. And it's clear that I think that there are still forces out there that will do whatever they can to keep us in a situation where we can't move forward on this lot because somebody else wants it.
I think we've pretty much covered everything by now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jan. Okay,
thank you.
moving on but thank you everyone for a really great discussion. So we move on to the business and finance resolution.
I just want to point out that we've made a revision to what we included in the board packet. And it's there in front of you. It's loose. It was just a clarification in a sentence. In our proofreading, we overlooked a contradiction. So the spirit of it is maintained, but the language is cleaned up. So
this is an item of action, so I think we need someone to read it and then second. Sorry, I'm lost in paper.
I'll read the resolution. The board resolves that the following library policies are revised as proposed. 7.4, investment policy, general operating fund. 7.5, investment policy, strategic fund equity. 7.6, gifts and bequests policy. 7.9, purchasing policy. 7.11, identification and disposition of obsolete, surplus, or salvage property. 7.16, library credit card policy. 7.17, library policy for acceptance of payments via financial transaction devices. 7.18, library policy for payment of library funds via electronic transactions. That all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion on this one?
Just remind us what we're
Okay.
doing here.
What
Thank
we've
you.
done is we've updated, primarily the conversation began with updates necessary for the investment policies. The policies were initially such that the ability to invest out beyond a year was difficult or prohibited. And at the time, the market was such that those types of investments within a year were doing really well for the library. That's not been the case. Both our financial institutions have recommended that the library be able to invest within the law and not, I mean, that's been made very clear here within the law in terms of what we can do or not do with our excess tax money, that they be allowed to manage that money in such a way that it can be out 5 to 10 years in some instruments, not all, and it'd be a spread. So the finance committees met with both investment bankers. We've conferred with our attorneys at Dykema and recommended that investments be allowed to go out to 10 years, but not longer, and within the portfolio. So not all of the portfolio out that far. So we took this opportunity to also go through all of the finance policies and update the terminology with titles and names. And for instance, the Thompson Bond Watch is no longer relevant to us, but Bauer Financial is, that rating system. So we've gone through all of the financial policies and updated them for that purpose. And also the other one was the purchasing policy was updated to 2017 numbers, which allows the library director to make contracts that go up to a certain amount, and that was updated to 2017 number, which is $33,000, and it goes up each year according to the CPI. So it was 1998 numbers, and so we pulled them up to 2017 numbers. So that's done. So that's what's been updated here and recommended.
Any questions about it?
It was perfectly reasonable.
Okay. All right, then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. All right, let's move to this last resolution, which is on page 44.
I will read the resolution. The board resolves that Circulation Policy 3.1 is revised as proposed, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded.
Is there a second? Sorry, Josie.
No, my fault.
Second.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask Eli if you want to walk through this policy change.
Sure.
And talk about why we're proposing it.
Matt, could I get the screen back? Thank you. All right. So there's a couple different changes in the policy, starting with section 3.1K. All right, so we mostly in K and L, we're removing specificity that binds the library staff from doing customer service related things. For example, one of the things is that a patron account may have a maximum of 5 claims returned items that have not been found. We routinely exceed 5 claims returned when we have a situation that merits it. So that's the sort of thing where a couple of these things we are looking to keep the values in the policy and remove the operational specifics that then change over time. Another example is it says that a patron may only receive a refund for an item that is returned within 3 months of being designated as lost, right? That's not something that we currently do. We give refunds regardless of how long ago the item was paid. If they bring the item back and they paid for it, we give them a refund. It also says that we must deduct the amount of the maximum overdue fine from the refund. We haven't been doing that either. So in many cases, we're catching the policy up to practice by removing some of the overly specific language and replacing it and just leaving that to procedure as opposed to being enshrined in the policy. So that's 3.1K and L. Any questions about either of those? Okay. Then we're talking about the fines table. So what we want to look at here is the way that late fees work. So we did some data analysis as requested last time. So here's what we've got. So we looked at the past 12 months worth of fees that have been collected. All right, so that's November 26 to November 2017. So we have assessed a total of $510,000 worth of fees, okay? Out of that, $311,000 has been paid and $198,000 has been waived. So we routinely waive about 40%, 30 to 40% of all the fines that are assessed automatically by the system.
Why do you waive them?
To be nice and to keep people using the system and to provide excellent customer service.
This includes the summer games waivers too, right?
That includes when you have your coupon, but that is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of that $200,000 worth of waived. Okay. I mean, we might do 500 of those $5 coupons over the course of the summer. So it's not a meaningful amount of that part of money. Most of the waivers are people coming up to the desk and saying, I forgot, or whatever. We say, it's fine, it's fine. Well, we waive overdue fines routinely. We do not waive bills generally when someone has lost an item, but we waive overdue fines routinely for things that have been returned.
Right.
Okay? So then out of that $311,000 worth of fines that were actually paid, $258,000 of that was late fees. Okay? The other $38,000 was replacements, meaning people paying for things they've lost, and then about $14,000 of other fees. That is primarily, we were still doing Zoom Lens during this past 12 months, so that's some of it, as well as when you get referred to collections, there is a $9.95 fee that is added to your account to cover the cost of the collection agency. So that's the other part of that other fees. But as you can see, that's a small percentage of the revenue. Any questions about this so far?
Say that again.
When you exceed the balance and are sent to the collection agency after having 45 days to resolve your account, there's a $9.95 fee that is added onto your account for being referred to the collection agency. That's how the collection agency charges us, is we are charged per account. So we pass that charge on to the patron, and that fee is then applied to their account when they've been sent to collections.
How frequently does that occur?
You know, we send, I don't have the numbers in front of me. You know, we send, probably about a couple hundred accounts per month are referred. Yep. So the volume is fairly high, but again, that is something we do have the power to waive that $9.95 fee when the situation merits it, so that happens as well.
Is there anything to learn from who we send to collections? Do they have can we group them, there's this group and that group, or is it random and not worth worrying about who does it?
It's not generally worth worrying about, with the exception of there are people who take a bunch of stuff and disappear. That is one small part of it, but it is as close to a persona as you can get. The majority of it are people who check out a lot of stuff, return it slightly late, and then don't pay attention to the status of their account.
Like me. My account's been sent to collection. I believe I paid all of the fees.
Whoa.
Mary Morgan, if you're listening.
I used to collect fines
my gosh.
in the seminary,
I paid it.
library. What I learned from that experience was that one's future occupation bears little relationship to how many fines you're on.
I mean, this happens all across the board, and it's because of there are no limits on use of the collection, and because, as we'll talk about here in a minute, if you check out 20 DVDs and they all go 2 days overdue, and you return them 2 days overdue and don't look at your account again, you're going to collections 45 days later. So that's one of the things we'd hope to address with this. Okay, so this is a pie chart of all fees paid by owning location of the material. Okay, so the downtown collection, as you'd expect, is the majority of the fees paid. What is interesting about this one is that the tools collection, because of the way that we handle the tools, they're all like their own location, so it's very easy for us to pull that out. It's a very small amount of money that comes from the tools collection. Also, what you don't see on here are fines that we collect from Melcat items, which is a similarly small amount of money. But you can see Westgate is very busy, so there's a lot of materials that go out of there that then accrue fines later. Same thing with mallets, Pittsfield being the least. So this kind of gives you a rough sense of it. And one of the things is we're talking about what the tools late fee should be. It's not, there's not, the tools collection is very small and very lightly, the total number of checkouts in the tools collection is very small compared to the whole rest of the collection. So any change is not going to have a huge impact on the fine revenue, because even if you multiplied times 10 your fine revenue from the tools collection, you're still, just in the range of one of the branches.
Do we know what percentage of our tools are checked out? That is, do we know?
At a given
Presumably
time.
measure the use of them.
I don't have that number in front of me, but last time we looked at it, the tools collection was the most intensely used collection in the system
That
in
was
terms
the-
of
that was
checkouts
the-
per item.
That was the information I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so this just gives you a sense of the breakdown. Okay, so there's one other thing that is in the policy, and that's the maximum late fee per item. It says in the policy there's a value that's written in there, which is that the cost of the total maximum late fee should not exceed the cost of the item, right? That's a great thing to have in a policy. It says this is the boundaries of it. Of course, it didn't foresee having some very valuable things in the collection, but also it means that there's a $10 maximum. Okay, so that is the way it currently is for books and DVDs and CDs at $10 maximum. So just to look at how often people hit that $10 maximum, our sample included 260,000 fee records. That's an individual instance of a fee being assessed. Out of those, only 3,775 of them are for the maximum late fee of $10, right? So that's 1.4%. Again, not a big part of that. Out of that, only 2,703 of those maximum late fees were actually paid. The rest were waived. So that's about 1% of the total amount of fines. Out of all of the late fees we collected, the maximum late fees make up about 10% of all of that money that has come in. Okay, so maximum late fees account for about 10% of late fee revenue. Okay? All right, so to make an attempt to project what impact the policy change would have, we're able to look very easily at the Westgate fines and fees because the location codes are very well laid out. Just as an example, we can't really tell how many fees came from DVDs versus came from books at the downtown library because they're both in the same location. That's the way the system works. It can only separate them out by location. So this is one of the things we hope to resolve with our new system, but for now we're kind of bounded in by what the system can deliver. And it can very easily tell us this at Westgate, so we use this to make a projection for the whole collection. So at Westgate, during our sample, we received $25,000 worth of book late fees over that period and $29,000 worth of AV fees over that same period. What's proposed in the policy change is the decrease of the per day fines for AV to 25 cents a day instead of $1 a day. When the $1 a day for DVDs was set, DVDs were a lot more precious and rare. We had a lot fewer of them, and their cost was more. So that's the majority of people who go to collections are people who have 10 items and they're 1 day overdue. That puts them at the $10 threshold and they can't use their card, right? Okay. So that's a total of $54,000 that we received in the past year from late fees at Westgate. If all AV late fees were 25 cents a day instead of $1 per day out of this sample, now this does not take into account any impact on behavior that making this change would be. This is just if every one of those dollar fees was a quarter instead, we would have collected $25,214 for book fees, because that's not changing, and $7,298 for AV fees. In other words, that's a total of $32,000, a decrease of fine revenue of about 40% from late fees. Okay, so if we applied that to the entire collection, a 40% late fee decrease would decrease the amount of revenue from $258,000 to $155,000. Okay, that when you combine it with the other parts that aren't changing, being the other fees as well as the replacements, that would be about a 33% decrease in the fine revenue. Okay, so that's from $311,000 during the sample to $207,000. Again, not anticipating any behavior changes.
Eli,
Yep.
that's a question. Can you go back one slide?
Sure.
So when you calculated the decrease, what I saw was that the decrease was substantial on the where dropped down to 7,298.
Yes.
And what I took from that is that relatively few people are hitting the maximum, since the maximum would remain the same.
The maximum would remain the same.
So most people
we
are just
can't
at their-
anticipate that.
But with this projection, what you're saying is it's not that
since the maximum is $10, it's not that 2,521 people or items were kept, because then the amount would be the same.
Right, well, I didn't account for hitting the maximum because we saw only 10%, only 1% of all fines hit the maximum.
Got it, so you just.
And this would make it
divided.
less likely to hit the maximum.
Okay.
So, because not that many of them are hitting the maximum, so I didn't account for that. So this is just simply
Dividing.
a quarter of
Okay.
that fine.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so what this means is if you make this sole change of decreasing the per day fee on DVDs and Blu-rays from $1 a day to 25 cents a day, that we can expect or project maybe $100,000 less revenue, which is about 0.6% of the revenue side of the operating budget. Okay? So, whoops. Those are the basics of the change. The two other parts that are in the procedure, these are impossible to anticipate what the impact would be because we don't have any experience with them. However, we're at a good time of year to do this if this change go into effect with the new system on January 2nd. By the time we get to approving next year's budget in April and May, we will have several months of experience with this and we'll be better able to project what our new fine revenue actually is. So, as it says in the proposal talking about increasing the tools fine to $5 a day instead of $1 per day, and removing the maximum so that the maximum is otherwise specified in the policy of the cost of the item is the maximum. Currently, there's zero incentive to return an overdue tool once it hits $10. Because there's no reason, there's no financial incentive to bring it back. These are the most in-demand items in the collection. They're the most expensive items in the collection. And $5 per day seemed like a reasonable place to go with that. But it's hard to anticipate. You know, it's unlikely to make up this difference because the volume of tool circulation is so much lower. The other thing that is referenced in the policy is we need to introduce some way to do reservations of tools because the giant chest at the wedding use case. That's the sort of thing where the overdue fee needs to be serious because you're ruining someone else's wedding if you don't bring it back on time.
So
Right.
this is, I know, at least one of us has a question about this
Sure.
one, so.
Actually, can I back up 1 second?
Yes.
To look at the part we've talked about so far, what I hear you saying is the reason to lower the fees on videos is just because it's more fair.
Yes.
And really, those guys are bearing an undue burden when we originally said it, so we're recommending that no matter what, just because it's more fair.
Yes.
Right? Okay, that one I'm following. But I'm a little freaked out about $50 for tools.
What does reserve
That would
mean?
just be reserved tools.
Yep, but I'm still a little freaked out at the idea of my 13-year-old checking something out and being presented with a $100 bill because she was 2 days late with it. I think that our goal here is both, one, to be fair, and two, to encourage users to do the things that we think are good for all library patrons, right?
Can we
So-
clarify this? There are two tools, two
Yes.
tool sets? So I just want to make sure we
Yeah, and
clarify.
she-
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, but I assume.
Just for reservations.
They're not separate items, it's just whether or not.
They
that-
are separate items.
Yes.
Okay.
They are
yes.
absolutely
Yes,
separate items.
yes.
The reserved tools would be a completely separate record in the catalog. You would have to check something that says that you agree that this is going to be charged at a different rate. If it's due back later, it would be a different process for reserving it because you have to specify when it would be. So it is not another, it's not a separate, it's not like this telescope if you make a reservation. It's like here are 3 reservable telescopes and all the rest of the telescopes that are on the shelf. These would not be on the shelf.
Can a 10-year-old do it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good question. We haven't ever gotten into that.
Because I think that's kind of the issue that like.
Well, here's one thing that we've talked about is that you wouldn't even be able to pick these up at the downtown library, just logistically. So
Okay.
you would need to drive possibly to the archives location is one of the places that we've talked about circulating these out of.
All right, that makes
I-
it harder for a 10-year-old to do
I
it.
have more questions as well.
Please.
Are all tools limited to a 1-week checkout?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. How is it decided?
It depends on the tool. For
Okay.
example, the telescopes are 2 weeks so that you get either side of a full moon.
Okay, so
But most of them are 1 week.
I have checked out a tool for 1 week 2 times. It's a yarn swift. I can't get all my yarn wound in 1 week. So I've asked, can I renew it? No, you can't renew it. If I start getting dinged, so, I can schedule, like maybe this weekend I can get the yarn wound, but what if I go over, right? if I take an extra day and it's $1, no problem. But if it's $5, I can buy a yarn swift for $50. And I start doing this math. Now, this is a ridiculous example, I understand. But lots of people are going to have this thing. Like, what's the value of a $50 yarn swift when it's $5 a day and I can pay for the yarn swift in 10 days? I think it's too high. Now, your point, however, is well made in that, like, you want to incent me to bring the thing back so somebody else can use it, because there are plenty of other women and men who want to wind their yarn out there.
Two guys
No
that
offense.
went to the knitting when I came in.
There are plenty of other people out there who want to wind their yarn.
But is the yarn winder a reservable item? I can't imagine a wedding where they're.
But that sort of use case where I have a weekend off or I have a vacation, it's certainly not top of our list of items to make reservable. But if this infrastructure is in place and it's working, it'd be something we'd experiment with more titles having
Or
copies.
you would lengthen the loan period to
Yeah.
2 weeks, because it makes sense to do that, because someone's likely, you're not the only person saying there's not enough time.
And sewing machines are a longer
Sewing
period
machines
for
are
that
longer,
exact
well,
reason.
and they're a longer period of time, because I said that's 1 week's not reasonable, right?
So the what if fines became exponential for tools, where it's $1 for week 1 if I'm over, so then I pay $7 if I'm a week late, but then if I'm 8 days late, then it goes up to $5.
I don't know that we can do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
It seems complicated.
Okay.
I also worry that.
It's also hard to
again,
communicate.
My 13-year-old would, would
Good
be
point.
confused about it.
Okay.
That's true. It's interesting.
This was a starting point, so this was the conversation we wanted to have.
So, I mean, it's interesting. I can see the value to people being able to reserve things for sure, but the more you talk about it, the more it sounds like we're really talking about offering a whole new service of reservable items, and it makes it sound more like a rental center rather than a freely circulating library.
Well, except this is something that libraries do. As a matter of fact, the new system has a capability to do exactly this because of course reserves and all the things that's very common to be able to place a reserve on an item for a set period of time. And even before we had the tools collection, we had demand for being able to specify when your hold would be due. And we're handling that another way for materials. But in the case, I mean, the fact is, we're buried in demand for this. You know, I mean, as soon as the weather gets warm again, it is constant saying, and right now it's a very manual process, and we can't meet a lot of that demand. But this would be a mechanism by which we could establish a separate collection that was useful for reservations with its own system and its own way of circulating. And we'd be able to meet a lot of demand and provide a service that people are asking for.
Is the artwork part of this, or is it?
The artwork, I don't think that there's again, we would see if there was interest in it. We don't anticipate it because those things, it's rarely the case that your event would be ruined if you couldn't get that particular art print on that particular date.
Okay.
It's possible, but we have never had someone ask us for this.
Okay.
Whereas during the summer, every one of the outdoor toys and games has, can I get this on this date? Can I get this on this date? Same thing with some of the projectors and the PA and lots of equipment like that.
Okay. So if we're thinking about this as establishing almost a separate collection, would we expect to have all of those items in the regularly circulating collection as well, or might there be items you could only get this way?
I don't think we would have any items that were only available through reservation.
That feels right.
There would definitely be some items that were not available for reservation, you know, but I mean, it would, again, it would mostly be demand driven.
Demand driven.
Yeah.
It's been at least 15 minutes since somebody said sewage, crock, or sanitation. So I just, for the 5 viewers on the live stream, in case they're playing a drinking game, I wanted to say that. Do you think that we have, I'm just thinking about making up some of the potential lost revenue, which is pretty, I mean, percentage-wise, is fairly insignificant to the whole. But we are not enforcing a policy that if you have any material that someone else has on hold, that you pay a premium.
No,
a premium fee, and is that something we can do in the new system?
Yeah, it's very tricky to implement it that way. In some ways, we're already doing that by allowing instant renewal for things that people aren't on request. Almost no libraries offer unlimited renewals. Generally, you get one.
But I'm just saying, like, if I'm reading Roxanne Gay's book and I am like number 500 and the 499th person is held onto that book for 6 months and it's just paying the fine, like, what can can you leverage that? I mean, it's essentially like if at U of M, if you have a recalled material and you hold on to it, you get paid some.
Well, after a certain amount of time, they get billed for it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the bill goes through. Now, there's one other thing we didn't talk about, which is changing the billing, the cutoff threshold
Yeah.
and the collection agency threshold,
Yeah.
which is changing both of those to $25. It's very confusing currently that there's these 2 points.
Right.
So one is $10 is too low, I think, for the cutoff, given that we allow unlimited checkouts.
Right.
So it's very easy to go home with 40 books when you've got a little kid.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you can't renew any of them simply because they're all 3 days overdue.
Right.
Right? So raising the cutoff threshold and then that the collection agency threshold would be the same number. So when you get locked out from using your library card, you have 45 days to resolve that. You would receive 3 biweekly notices saying, here, your balance is over this, your balance is still over this, your balance is still over this, before they would be referred to the collection agency. And then again, I know we mentioned this last time, our collection agency that we use by design cannot affect a patron's credit. It's something we don't talk about too much because it is helpful to believe that it can affect its credit in order for it to be effective. But there's not a mechanism by which we can actually impact a patron's credit.
And we're actually not interested in.
Right.
Yeah.
So one clarification of something you said, Eli. If I have 40 books checked out and they're all 3 days overdue, my experience, I thought, had been that I could renew them, and then I would get assessed the fines and not be able to check anything else.
But it would be like the situation where you have returned them, you didn't know that you returned them 3
Got
days
it.
overdue, and the fine hit your account,
And-
and you've got more at home.
And with our new system, the renewal and the way that happens that I can renew things and then not check things out will still work that way.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. That's pretty much industry standard, is that fines are assessed when the item is returned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to propose a revision to
So
this?
I'm not prepared to vote for it at this point, so I think I would recommend that we do a revision. I'm not quite sure I know exactly what it should be, though. One question, it's interesting, when you were talking about $10 being too low, I actually kind of like that it's low, because that's the number at which I feel comfortable sort of getting to, and then I get locked out of checking anything else, and then I pay the library.
I know. I like to
kind
have
of
the same
worked it that
process.
way.
And I imagine we're not alone.
Yeah.
So I like that it's lower. I mean, I never want to go to collections. I just
It's a
think that is
safety, it's a safety valve. $10 gives you a safety valve, because if I looked in my account, it's up to 25, and I missed it in 3 days.
So
I think what you're saying is that we really want to stop behavior like mine, where I'm sort of comfortable paying my fees. We want to make people actually return things on the day that they're due.
Well, that's the intent of the fee structure. However, I think it's also very much about communication and expectation and people being able to understand what's coming. So that's where the
Simple.
genesis of there not being 2 thresholds at which different things happen. It was like, this is the magic number. When you've passed the magic number, things start happening.
I think if we have this, I mean, I like the idea of the reserved tools system because I've also run into this issue of, time-based desires to check things out, right? But the communication around a $50 daily fine has to be absolutely impeccable. And just so out there and above board and really clear about the intention and purpose.
We're not trying to raise revenue here. We're
That's
just trying to
right.
meet user needs.
Right.
right.
And so we are in the discussion period of a
Correct.
resolution here. And if I think we have 2 options, which is to vote on the resolution, or maybe 3, vote on the resolution with some kind of revision, or call the question on whether or not to vote today. Is that correct?
You can table it.
We
too.
can table it. All right. So I would move to table this resolution so that we can all do some individual thinking and maybe
It takes
ask,
a lot of kind of digesting.
digest and
Very
ask
interesting.
Eli questions. So I move to table.
I second.
Thank you.
But not tabling it with the idea of not revisiting it. I mean, I
No.
think we're committed to the
Tabling
idea of
means you
changing it.
revisit.
I would
Visit in December.
table and revisit in December.
Okay.
It would be helpful, I think, for Jamie as the president to hear from individuals about what questions Eli might address at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Well, I think he's been very detailed, and there's been a
Yeah.
lot of thought has gone
So you need
into
to call
this
that for a
already.
vote.
Agreed.
One suggestion I think I'd make is rather than give us one resolution in case we don't all come to consensus on everything, you might want to split the pieces out. We haven't talked about, for example, having the tool daily fine raised to 5 to the cost
We
of
don't have
item.
to be unanimous.
No, but we might agree as a group on some provisions and not others. So we have to think of a way that we could support that if in the future we were prepared to vote yes on some parts.
We can do that now.
Oh, we could do that in the meeting?
That's absolutely right. We just have to drop the resolution in real time, which I've become skilled at doing.
It's true. However, it is 10
However, it
minutes
is
after 9.
9:10, and if
saw-
unless the board or unless the staff feels this is an absolutely urgent need for us to resolve,
It
right
will be
now.
in December.
It
will
would
be in
help, it
December.
would help us a lot
Okay.
to resolve as much as you can now as we start moving through changing this website over and getting things done.
We could take out the tools, but I see Ed has his hand up, so
I'm just going to say, I'm going to support it as proposed.
as proposed.
And there's no such thing as a perfect fine system. What I heard here was some enlightened self-interest. And something about the shoe pinching, perhaps. I am going to support it as it is. I am quite certain that the library will come back to us with particular pinches in 3 to 6 months and saying, we made a mistake and we need to revise this, this, and this. But you won't know until you put it in place. And I think what I heard was defensible. I don't always agree with it. I didn't fully understand a few pieces. I'm not a tool user. If I need a yarn winder, I'm going to buy it. And
also
I
have
recommend
Roxanne
you do
Case
too, especially if you use that much of it. But I will support it as proposed. And I think we ought to just go ahead.
So we have to
We have a
to vote
motion
on the
on the
motion to
table.
table. Yeah.
We
So
have
can.
a motion to table on the table that we need to vote on.
That's correct.
So some-
Ed's considering voting tonight. Is anyone else before we vote on that
I'm
motion?
ready to vote tonight.
You're ready, Jan? Victoria's not.
Well, take your vote. and then
I
let's
would-
take the vote.
All right,
Yeah.
so,
I would vote.
okay.
I'm
So-
gonna play Margaret and be like, rules of order. Take the vote, Jamie.
Maybe she's one of the 5 viewers at home.
She might be.
Okay, so all those in favor of tabling?
Aye.
So we have 2, 3, 2. Okay. Opposed?
That's me.
Okay.
Jamie, did you vote?
I thought I didn't vote.
You vote,
You
Jamie.
voted. Of course you vote.
Oh, God.
Well, we don't have another motion.
Well,
Yeah,
it
we
doesn't
did.
matter
You
which
got
way I
the-
vote,
Yeah,
so,
you got the votes. Okay,
so yeah.
But you have to vote.
Jamie has to vote.
Can't not vote.
Yeah.
Right.
I vote, let's not table, let's get it done.
Okay. So the next question, we can move the resolution as is, or we could move to accept all but the tools section.
Or the fines
The
section.
yeah, the tools in the fine table. I would actually, let's just focus on the tools and, because there are the other fine changes, correct? Or no?
Well, it's just
Oh, it's eliminating
It's
the
removing DVDs from the dollar.
DVDs,
We're
yeah.
removing the dollar a day tier.
So we could rewrite the resolution to accept all of the changes to policy 3.1 with the exception of tools reserved and tools.
So wait, do you want to remove it so that we can vote on everything else tonight, or do you want to just fix it?
Yeah, that's what I'm. Yeah, or we can try to fix it.
Did Jim make a motion?
No.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, you can do whatever you like.
I think we're ready to take a vote, just to vote, on the policy as is. I think we'd get a split vote, but I'm okay with that. I'm interested to know how the vote will go.
That vote's already on the table.
That's what we can vote on right now.
So we could just do that right now
Yeah.
and see where we are.
Yeah.
Okay?
Let's just do the vote.
But it's Victoria, expressing some serious reservations. So if you would
Right.
like to rewrite or a different resolution, we can do that.
I think we should go forward with voting on this resolution, and if it passes, I think we're done. I don't think I have anything else to say substantive,
Okay.
and if it doesn't pass, then we should work on a resolution that we can pass. Does that make sense to people?
It's super reasonable.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
No.
Look at that.
Good job. Okay, motion passes.
Enlightened self-interest, right.
Congratulations. Go ye and charge $50 a day.
No, try to make sure behavior, try not to do that. Oh my gosh. Citizens'
gosh.
comments, has anyone made it?
They're all
Karen?
gone.
Okay. All right.
We are
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.